So, welcome everyone to our partner session, Building a Business for the Life You Want, how I 8x'd my business by niching down with Kurt Elster. So, for those who are just tuning in, my name is Levin Mejia. I'm a designer advocate at Shopify. So, if you visit our partner site at shopify.com/partners on the blog, we will provide you with all the resources you need to get started with Shopify and to grow your freelance business. So, I help do that, and I meet a lot of people at conferences, and that's where I've met Kurt this past spring, summer. And Kurt Elster is a consultant, a speaker, an author, an overall super genius in my books when it comes to Shopify. So we have him today.
I'm writing that down.
Super genius.
Super genius.
Yeah, write that down. I got a lot from his talk at the Converge conference in South Carolina. And it's going to be awesome to hear from him. So I don't want to take away any more time, and so we can leave as much time as possible for Q&A. So with that, Kurt, I'm going to go and make you a presenter, and then we can get started. Let's see here. All right, you should have controls. And here we go. All right. So, Kurt, thanks again for joining us. I'll let you take it from here. If you have if any times you need to have some questions, you can just ask me and I'll hop on. But I'll mute myself now. And
sure. And just, Levin, just to verify, you could see my slide.
I can see your slide. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great.
That quote from Brennan Dunn.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Here we go. All yours.
So, my name's Kurt Elster, and I'm here to talk to you about building a business for the life you want. 7 years ago now, 2009, I quit my job, didn't have a plan, and tried to start my own SaaS e-commerce business, and failed miserably at that. And since then, the 5 years after that, slowly and steadily built an agency, and then niched it down into exclusively Shopify. And I've been doing exclusively Shopify work for about 2 years now, and that was one of the best decisions I ever made. So I'm here to talk to you about the mindset I learned in that process and the process I would go through if I had to start over today. So this is building a business for the life you want, how I 8x my business by niching down. And I've broken it into 3 parts. The first is the rules, and the rules are just guidelines for the mindset you need to have to do this. Let me start my timer, sorry. And then the second part is the process we'll go through, and then the third is practical advice on how to go about building your authority and getting your message out there and being known as a Shopify expert. So step 1, throw the rules out. I have people who give me unsolicited advice all the time. This happens to everybody. It's just human nature. And the first thing to do is you can safely throw all that out. Any conventional wisdom, conventional advice, you don't have to follow it. You don't have to do it. And oftentimes it's beneficial not to, because it's going to help you separate yourself from the crowd and rise above it. So as an example, I have our web design agency website. It's ethercycle.com. We don't have a portfolio. And that's like, who would hire a designer with no portfolio? It actually has worked out. We get far more leads without the portfolio than we did before. Is that for everybody? Probably not, but it's worked well for us. And before I did it, I had so many people tell me I couldn't do it and that it was a terrible idea. And it wasn't. So if you think something will work for you, go ahead and do it. Number 2, charge more. When was the last time someone said, well, what do you charge hourly? What's your price? And I don't, for the record, I don't think you should charge hourly, but we'll get to that. But if you've never had someone shocked by the price you give them, you're not charging enough. Everybody doesn't charge enough. This is a problem in SaaS businesses, in local stores. It's a problem everywhere. People don't charge enough. They don't value their time. I think as humans, it's our nature just to undervalue ourselves. So I don't care what you're charging now. You can probably double or triple your rates, and nothing bad will happen. You will do less work for more money. That's what will happen. And you have to always remind yourself, it's your business. Do what the you want. Your business works for you, not the other way around. So, early on in my career, a mistake people make is not setting firm boundaries, not making their own rules. And that's just a recipe for a madhouse. Your clients, the inmates will be running the asylum, if you don't decide what it is that you want to do and what your rules are. And I've made that part of my onboarding process where I say, like, all right, here's the hours I'm available, here's what to expect, here's how to contact me. I make all those boundaries very clear up front because I don't, well, my wife would kill me if I were working all the time. So that's my solution to it. I've made my own rules, and that's the joy of owning your own business. And I think a lot of people start freelancing because they don't want a boss, and essentially they just trade one boss for multiple bosses in the terms of clients. You want to work collaboratively with them, and you have to set boundaries for that to happen. And in that process, I think you should specialize. We used to generalize, and the issue with generalizing is you never become a master at everything. If you focus on doing one thing well, the quality of your work will improve, and you'll stand out among your competitors. The pushback I get from people on this is they say, well, I can't just do one thing, I'll get bored. No, what happens is you get really good at it and discover there's so many nuances and layers and all these things you didn't know were possible or doable before you specialized and just became an expert. If we use doctors as an example, you're as a freelancer, you're a professional. Doctors, lawyers, they're all in professions too. Who gets more, a general practitioner or a neurosurgeon? And at the same time, part of specializing is turning away work that doesn't fit in your specialty. So you're never going to find, like a neurosurgeon setting someone's broken ankle. So I think it's really important to define both what you do and what you don't do and stick to that. As a general rule, I would try to build a client portfolio. One time we had these two huge agency clients, with these two $50,000 projects, and then they both fired me because you can't predict what's going to happen in other people's businesses. So I think having a traditional job is the riskiest thing you could do because you have a single point of failure. You have one boss who could fire you, you're getting one paycheck, and that's it. When you're freelancing, you can really make your life risk-free by having a multitude of clients. And I think this applies mostly to developers who will, if you're purely a developer, it's easy to get a contract or retainer that's 40 hours a week and takes up all your time. I would shy away from that and try to diversify. Earlier I mentioned that I loathe hourly billing. I don't like hourly billing. So clients will often ask me, oh, what's your hourly rate? And I used to tell them and then preface it with a caveat. Now I just say I don't have one. I work purely on a fixed price, fixed scope basis. And part of, that is often called Productize consulting. If you Google Productize consulting, you'll find a lot of stuff about it, like from Brennan Dunn and a little bit from Nick DeSabato. DrafterVise is a great example of Productize consulting service. But Productize consulting service is just a fancy name for saying fixed price, fixed scope. So if you go on our agency website, we have several packages, and they're clearly defined. I've got just the price published, which scares a lot of people. It shouldn't. It's one of the best decisions we made. And the scope, clearly published for what we do. And when you own a process, it makes it easier to pitch. It puts you in control. You're clear about what you're selling, and potential customers are much more likely to buy your product because they know what you're going to get. In selling professional services, just as selling e-commerce products, you need to bust people's objections. You need to take away that ambiguity, and I think this is the way to do it. Hourly billing is essentially saying, well, it might cost this much, it may not. That's scary. I want to know what something costs before I buy it. I mean, imagine buying a car and they say, like, well, you buy the car, drive it for a month, and then in a month it'll cost $30,000 to $50,000. Well, which is it? I think people buy from people, not brands. And that's why I've got, our agency website, it's me and several other people, but I still have my name, face, and signature on everything because it personalizes it. People want to deal with other people. I don't want to buy from a brand. And when it's interesting to see, one-person agencies, one-person consultants try and make themselves look like these big shops, by hiding behind a brand. And that's silly because, big shops like Walmart, Target, imagine they hire spokespeople because they want to have a face. If you're a one-person shop, you have this unbelievable opportunity to connect with people on a personal level. So I would absolutely leverage that. Get out from behind your brand. Stop hiding. Put your name, your face out there on your marketing materials. If you look at my agency website, if you look at everything, you'll see I like often have my headshot in there. I write things in the first person. It just makes it easier because you're starting that conversation with prospects before you ever even talk to them. My wife is a debt collector, and her best advice for avoiding overdue invoices is to not let them happen. And so I took that to heart, and I've been charging upfront in full 100% of the time. So, people ask, how do we get started? And I said, well, you pay the deposit. How much is the deposit? Well, it's the full cost. And many people don't even question it, and for the few who do, I say, well, I'd be happy to break it into 2 payments of 50-50, but you'll lose your 10% discount. And then so essentially I'm charging it's a 10% surcharge for me taking on the risk of splitting a project into 2 parts. And the reason I think projects work much better when you bill entirely upfront is, the client doesn't have this fear anymore about holding that last payment hostage and keeping a project going and pushing scope, and you eliminates that nasty situation where the client holds the payment hostage and then you start resenting them. That goes away. The whole relationship goes much smoother when you charge 100% up front. And if you've niched down, one of the things, you've niched down, so I only work on Shopify. So I have to say no to everything else. I turn down stuff that's outside our core focus. I turn down clients that exhibit red flags, and I turn down things that don't get me excited. I learned to say no, and that's hard because people are dangling money in front of you. So you have to practice that. You need to learn to say no to pushing scope creep, to bad ideas, to bad fit projects and clients. And when you do that, you're going to make your life a lot less stressful. In the process of doing this, there's you're going to have moments where you doubt yourself, where you need to bounce ideas off of people. And I think the best way to do that is to join a mastermind group or find a coach or mentor. Ideally, I think a mastermind group. Mastermind group's pretty simple, straightforward concept. It has a silly name, but really it's just, let's say you get 4 to 8 people in a Slack channel together, and then you meet once a month in a Google Hangout. That's a mastermind group. You get like-minded business owners together. They don't all have to be Shopify owners. My most successful mastermind group is the only commonality is that we make money online and we're consultants. So beyond that, we've got people who are doing info products and doing WordPress, and I'm the only one in there doing Shopify. It's really helpful to have like-minded individuals where when I'm like, gee, I don't know what I should do about this client. I don't know what I should do about this product. Should I take this on? Being able to go to those people, present them with it, and they're already familiar with your business. It's so helpful. This easily, I joined a mastermind group I think 3 years ago, and that was one of the best decisions I made. You gotta think big. You gotta strut, peacock, tell everybody. So if you don't toot your own horn, on your projects, on why you're great, no one else is going to do it for you. And often even worse, if you don't toot your own horn, someone else might take credit for the stuff you're doing. So you gotta, when you're at a party and you're being humble, that's fine. You're being polite. In your marketing and your business, I don't think you could do it. I think it pays off, to brag. If you did a great job on something, don't be shy about saying so. And if you need to learn to talk like a business owner, I mean, it's a hard thing to quantify, to qualify what talking like a business owner sounds like. But I think the difference between a freelancer and consultant is really just their hourly rate and their language. If you start talking to other business owners as a business owner, where you're talking about value, the value you're providing, the return on investment, if you're really comfortable about talking like money, that's going to pay off. You're going to have more strategic conversations, and people are going to respect you more. So part 2, those are the rules. That's, I think, the mindset you got to get into here. Part 2, the process. And that's, how we're going to implement this. This is what I would do if I had to start over. I think number 1, you got to decide who you want to work with. And those people are going to be your best buyers. If you look at, for us, we looked at, okay, where do we, where do we have the best projects? And we were doing all kinds of stuff. We had WordPress and custom sites and a whole bunch of e-commerce platforms we worked on. And we saw, well, the e-commerce projects were the ones we liked the most. Those were the most fun. And I think a lot of it was because it's easy to quantify results. And then within e-commerce, we realized, well, Shopify is the one, like when we were done with those projects, we always thought like, oh, well, if that was easy, it wasn't that they were easy, it's that we liked it, we were good at it. So once we'd identified that, that's what we stuck with. And then we're always revising that, whittling it down. So within Shopify, we're revising our offerings, we're revising the kind of ideal client we want to work with. But once you decide that, you have a clear image of who you want to work with. And this is one of the hardest things, even though it's step one, is figuring that positioning. Chet Holmes, The Ultimate Sales Machine, highly recommended reading, says there's fewer best buyers than there are all buyers, and that means it's even cheaper to focus on them than all buyers. And we absolutely found this to be true. If you know who your best buyers are, you can then write a positioning statement. You could position yourself, and this will become the cornerstone of all your marketing. So I would say, I got this from Jonathan Stark on expensiveproblem.com. I'm a blank who helps blank with blank, unlike my competitors blank. So what we're really saying is, what you do, who you do it for, and how you help them. And then the unlike my competitors is your competitive advantage, your unique selling proposition. So as an example, mine would be Kurt Elster is an e-commerce consultant who helps Shopify store owners uncover hidden profits in their stores. Unlike a web designer, Kurt's a revenue maximizer, not a pixel polisher. And once you've got that positioning statement, I would turn it into a sales letter. And sales letters I found were really intimidating to write for me initially. So I started reading lots of different sales letters. And I quickly discovered they all kind of follow the same basic format. It's a 3-part format. So number one, you don't talk about yourself. You don't say I all the time. You need to cure yourself of IREA. You want to talk to and about your best buyer. So you want to describe to them the pain that they're feeling. And the advantage to this is anyone who doesn't feel that pain isn't your best buyer, and they're going to go away. So you're only going to speak to people that are these ideal clients. And then you want to paint them a picture of what their life would be like without that pain. So you want to show them the dream. And then only after you've done that is when you could show them the fix. And then that's where you present your offering, what you can do for them. And then, you get into social proof stuff like testimonials and risk reversal guarantees. But a really great book, it's only an hour read, very quick, incredibly actionable, and wonderful, is Sean DeSouza's The Brain Audit. Amazing, phenomenal book that really just spells out, okay, if you're writing a great sales letter, here's the 7 parts to it, here's how to do it, and here's examples. And this has helped me immensely. And then I think you got to use, once you've got that sales page up, you got to use your phone's interview app. You got to, and this joke works much better, if you could see me, but your phone's interview app is your phone. You have to get on the phone and you have to talk to people. And if you've got an existing business, you can interview 10 of your past clients and leads to get their feedback. You just want to get them on the phone, say, hey, I've got this offering that I'm working on, and I think you're the ideal candidate for it. I'd love it if you could just spend 15, 20, 30 minutes on the phone with me and tell me what you think of it. And once you get their feedback on it, you're going to hear what the objections are, and then you can add those to your sales letter to help break those objections, help clarify things. And then you could validate your pricing right there on the phone by saying, okay, I was thinking about pricing it at X. Would that be valuable? And if they say yes, they say, well, I'll give you, a discount right now. You could buy it, and then you've made your first sale. So not only is this valid market research, it's also a really low pressure Trojan horse sales call of sorts. But if you can't do this, if you can't find people just to talk to about your project or about your initial service offering, how are you going to find customers? So I think starting with your immediate network, past clients and leads, is the best way to do that. And once you're there, that's when you could start to grow it. You could start to build a list, build an audience. And for me, that's I started with a newsletter, and I had a lead magnet, and I just used getdrip.com as my newsletter software, but use whatever you're comfortable with. And I offered people a 5-day email course. I like email courses because I get to, it's plain text, it's personal, it's just like a letter from me to a friend, and it gives me multiple touch points. So rather than, dump a whole PDF on somebody, it's much easier just to break it up over a week, and that way we've kind of automatically, while I'm off sleeping, I'm building a relationship with someone, and they could reply to the email at any time, and then they'll get a personal reply from me back. But I think it's not enough just to have a newsletter sign up. You got to offer some value in exchange. People don't just want to give up their email and get spammed at random. So that's why I really like marketing automation tools like Drip for this. And by doing that, you could stay top of mind. So if you provide value to someone, there's no such thing as too many emails. I'm subscribed to a few newsletters, Jonathan Stark's, Philip Morgan's. Both of those, they send an email literally every day. And it's not scripted. They just send a broadcast email every day and ask them about it by getting into a habit. And it hasn't resulted in people unsubscribing or people getting upset, because so long as they're providing value, people are going to stay in the newsletter, and it wildly increases engagement rates. So I don't do daily. I do, depending on what campaign you're in, I do segmenting. You could get 3 emails a day from me, or a week from me easily. And part of that process is to build authority. So if you've got you've got your positioning figured out, you've got your offering, and you've got it validated, and you have a lead magnet out there, a newsletter, well then how do you drive people to it? How do you get traffic? And that's the really tough part. So we've built our base. Now part 3, building authority. So I would imagine that in this group, quite a few of you has listened to a podcast in the last month. And there's a good reason for that. And a good reason why we want to be on podcasts. So podcasts are growing rapidly. And with regard to overall sources for information on the internet, blogs and influencers rank among the top 5 most trustworthy. Which is amazing. And part of that is when you appear on a podcast, you're receiving some of the star power of the host, which raises your social status your social status level in the eyes of their audience. Because the guest is the star of the show. And once by appearing on podcasts, by doing guest blogging, you can convert listeners into subscribers. They're going to be, they have you in their ears for, say, 20 minutes. And it's a very personal medium. People listen to podcasts in the car, on the train, running. And it's like eavesdropping on a conversation. It's a really personal, fantastic medium to do a one-to-many knowledge transfer. Ryan Wagner, who runs letsmakeapps.io, said the subscribers he gets from podcast guesting are by far the most engaged subscribers, with like 90% open rates and 70% click rates. I found this to be true, and it's because it's that personal medium. It's because you feel, oftentimes when a client gets on the phone with me, they'll tell me, like halfway through the call, they go, I feel like I already know you. And it's because they've been listening to the podcast, so they know what I'm like. But how do you find podcasts? How do you get on them? So, it's a simple 2-step process. There's nothing fancy about it, just a little bit time consuming. Just got to do some legwork here. Number 1 is identify podcasts that your target market listens to. And number 2 is pitch topics that teach the audience something new. And I'll show you how to do that. So we got to identify those watering holes. What podcasts or blogs do your best buyers love? And, the first way to find this out, the easy way is, the obvious way rather, is to search in iTunes. And I'll be the first to admit it, iTunes does not have the best interface, but they do have this nice web view where you can dig through by category and find blogs. And if we go into management and marketing, there are hundreds. It's fantastic. The other method is to look in marketplaces and directories. So here's a good one, cast.market. Cast.market is a little nicer than iTunes in that you can search for stuff. And then find relevant podcasts that work for you. But my favorite method, which is why I've saved it to last, is to stalk your colleagues. You want to look for someone who's trying to reach the same target market as you. So as an example, we'll take my favorite person, myself, and look at what that looks like. So using just Google, a fancy Google Boolean operator, you could quickly find every podcast I've been on. So put somebody's name in quotes, and then add in parentheses in text : podcast, or in title : podcast, or in URL : podcast, or in URL : episode, and you will produce a listing of every podcast they've been on. And this works for blogs too. They just swap the word podcast for blog and episode for post. look at this. So this is a screenshot of doing this as an example for myself. And the first one is my podcast, of course. But then these others that I've highlighted, we found, I was a guest on Double Your Freelancing, a guest on Nights and Weekends podcast. And this is just the first page. You go on the next page, it keeps going. It's got 63 results. And it really makes it easy to find podcasts that accept guests and have your audience. I know, right? So, identifying the podcast was part one. Part two, you got to pitch them topics. And having guested on podcasts and pitched them and been on the receiving end of a lot of bad pitches since I host my own podcast, I could tell you the easy way to get around this. So, you want to first think about three things. What's something new you can teach the listeners? Number two, what's a common problem you can teach them how to solve? Or number three, what's an against the grain opinion that'll generate interest? So with the last one, you don't need to be controversial. You just need to be provocative. You need to have something where you can have a discussion about it. And the first two is, teach them something new. Teach them some 100-level thing that comes as second nature to you because you're an expert, but other people don't know about and would be helpful for them. Or similarly, how people can solve a common problem to them. So here's a good email template that I got from my buddy Kai Davis. This is from his book. I've used this with permission. This is a perfect email template. I have both used this and been on the receiving end of it, and it has absolutely worked on me. So I'd say, as an example, you say, hey, Kurt, I'm a big fan of the Unofficial Shopify podcast and loved your recent episode with Neil Patel where you talked about, what did we talk about? Content upgrades. I help teach people about SEO. I'd love to help teach your audience about any of the following topics. Topic one, backlinks. Topic two, on-page SEO. And topic three, performance. And you give them like a short description of how that benefits the audience. That's what a podcast host is interested in, is how are you going to benefit my audience? And you say, does one of these sound like they'd be a good fit for your audience? Just hit reply and let me know which topic you'd like to talk about. Then we can work out scheduling details. And then lastly, we say, additionally, I'd love to learn more about how you like your guests to prepare. If you have any onboarding documents you'd like me to read, please send them over. So that last line is nice. It's neat. It tells you automatically that the person is prepared, is interested, and has been on podcasts before. But what you're really doing here is making it as easy as possible for someone to get on your, to say yes to you. So rather than just give them one topic where they could say yes, no, you're giving them three topics. Makes it much more likely that they're going to pick one. And then you've really made their life easy by just saying, just hit reply, let me know. Then we can work out the scheduling details. So if I were on the receiving end of this and I like the topic, I could literally just reply, sounds good, topic two works. Done. That's it. I could say 4 words and get this person booked on my podcast. So my friend Eric Davis, Little Stream Software, he's a Shopify app developer. He pitched 7 sites, got a 100% response rate, so everybody told him yes or no, and over half of them, so 4 of them said, sure, let's do it. And then as a result, that turned into more opportunities. So it's kind of interesting. You end up trading up the chain. The hardest part is getting on the first one. Once you get on one, it snowballs. So he quickly was able to start writing for large sites that reach his dream buyers. He went from just pitching whatever podcast blogs to ending up on, he's got a guest blog post on Oracle's enterprise e-commerce site. Recommended reading, podcastoutreach.com. That's from my friend Kai Davis, and that's what that email template was from. And lastly, last step here, go buy a boat. So I know this sounds like a lot of the work, but this could be the difference between $30,000 a year as a freelancer and $300,000 a year as a consultant. And then lastly, if you want to grab these slides and more, I put them up at kurtelster.com/converge. Let's do some Q&A.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kurt. That was awesome. This is the second time I've watched this presentation, and there's so much valuable stuff that I already forgot, which was great to see again. And for those attending, we're going to have a recording available afterwards as well. So if you wanted to watch any of this, or if you showed up a little bit late. So after watching that, we'll take in some questions. It should be there on your right-hand side panel. For questions, just type in your question and we'll answer them live on air for a few minutes, anything you may have. To kick it off, I think one of the to kick off the question period is your positioning statement. I think the last time you spoke, you elaborated a little bit more how difficult you found it at first, Kirk. Maybe there's some tips you want to give.
Sure. I think, yeah, absolutely. Positioning is one of the hardest things people could do. I mean, I've seen people reduced to tears by the idea of positioning. And it's so scary because it feels like you're pigeonholing yourself. You're essentially, the task is write a single sentence that describes exactly what you're going to do for the rest of forever. That's what it feels like. And it isn't the case because you can revise it and iterate it over time. But and that's the process it took. I mean, I'm sure I'm on like number 50 variation of my positioning statement.
Mm-hmm.
And most people always start too broad and then start going narrower. But really, I mean, the positioning statement is an easy elevator pitch. It helps people quickly understand what you do. It's the less than 10-second way to tell people, this is exactly what I do. A good book and resource, fantastic, is Philip Morgan's The Positioning Manual. PhilipMorgan.com, I think, is where that's at, or just Google The Positioning Manual. It's a wonderful book that just walks through how to write a positioning statement, how to position yourself.
Okay, great. So we have 3 questions in here. The first one is from Luke Jordan. He says, how do you handle small projects and requests from past clients? Presumably, you don't, presumably sales funnels, do you sales funnel them via Wufoo? I get a lot of emails from past clients wanting to do some repeat business, and it's a bit overwhelming. I can read that back if you want. But
sure. No, I think, okay. So, if you're overwhelmed, I mean, it's a good problem to have. It means you've got plenty of leads, so that's wonderful. Congratulations. But I could see definitely where, as you position yourself, as you get narrower, you end up with these legacy clients, these old projects that come back. And that's where, you have to learn to say no, and and it's very difficult. So the trick is to be unbelievably polite when you decline someone. And if you want, email me. I will show you my template that I use to very politely decline people. But give them options. So I say, like, if a Shopify project, let's say it's not a good fit, or it's, it's minutia. It's like a $50 thing that I know is going to turn into a nightmare. So I'll say, well, either based on availability or after careful consideration, I got to politely decline the project, but I really want to thank you for your time and thank you for considering and offering this to me. But I'd like to help you in a different way. And this is the really important part, is saying that I'd like to help you in a different way or support you in a different way. And that's where I'll offer a referral to 3. I'll pick 3 Shopify experts or whoever I think would be a good fit for it. Give them 3 options. I have a lot of resources I've created, and like blog posts, podcasts, etc. I'll link them to those if it's appropriate. Help people help themselves, and or if it's a really tiny project, I'll refer to them. Something like Jonathan Kennedy's Hey Carson service. But the goal is you just don't want to leave them in the lurch. You want to just help them get to that next step. And I've sent that email dozens of times, and often, even though I'm saying no, I can't do that for you, no, that won't be possible, most people thank me, and they're genuine about it because I've helped them.
Nice. One other thing I should point out, and it's not, I know you said in your last presentation, so I want to say it here, is that Kurt niched down and did Shopify stuff or whatever you decide to do. But with Kurt, he actually just paid for his house in cash. Like, that's what can happen when you niche down. I had to mention that. It's true. It blew my mind, and people need to hear that.
Yeah, that was we had the closing date was a week ago, and we just moved in.
Nice, awesome.
And I'm thrilled to death.
So a question from Tia, Tia R. It's aside from podcasting, where are the best places to promote my services? Craigslist, Eek, Facebook, or Google Ads?
None of the above. I think you just want to get out there and educate people. So you need to find the watering holes where people hang out. There's at least a dozen Facebook groups for Shopify store owners. And if you're just in there present answering questions, being helpful, that will turn into, you'll get referrals, you'll get leads through that. Find a place, find a forum where you can demonstrate your expertise. So, Reddit, the Shopify forum, Facebook groups, and just drop e-bombs, education bombs, where you just provide a ton of value to people, either in the form of a post or a reply, and that's been the most powerful.
Nice. I think there's another good book people should read by Gary Vaynerchuk. I think it's called Jab, Jab, Punch, and that's what he talks about: give, 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 and then ask for something. So that works. So another question here from Anna White. She says, "Thanks so much. I'm just starting out and don't have a portfolio yet. I was fascinated with your stance on not having it. Can you tell us more why it worked for you?"
Initially I had a portfolio up, I had case studies, and I found that what was much more powerful was the social proof. So essentially what I've done is exchange the portfolio for a single case study that really is part of the sales letter and a lot of testimonials. And when people see that, that means much more than just a pretty design. People are interested in ultimately they want to reduce their risk. So social proof shows them that you're reducing their risk, and they're interested in outcomes. So I focused everything talking about the outcomes I get from my clients and demonstrating that with those testimonials.
Okay, awesome.
So, but yeah, if you can get, number one, if you can get testimonials, but two, if you don't have a portfolio up, start creating, like you could, create your own dream stuff and kind of put that up there.
Nice. We have one from Tia again, and she says, "How do I handle phone calls or meetings? Should I charge a consultation fee?"
I've gone both ways on this. What I used to do is if it was something I was on the fence about, if I wasn't really excited about it, I used Clarity.fm to charge people for the initial consultation call. Clarity.fm, great service. Essentially, you both call into a conference call number, and then it bills them by the minute, and you get paid via PayPal. And it also has a scheduling thing built into it. Really professional, really convenient. I like it a lot. But what I ended up doing is just putting people through the ringer in terms of, I have an application form, and feel free on eachcycle.com, fill out the contact form, and you'll get an automated email from me. I won't see it, so it's totally fine. And I'll have a link to an application form, and then I run people through the application form. And that way, I'm only talking to people who are generally interested in my service, and I do a lot less wasted time on the phone. Flat out, I do not take unscheduled phone calls.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Meetings and phone calls can be distracting. So we have here a question from Lauren. She says, "What's the best way to demonstrate value to potential clients? For example, if you're pitching a new digital marketing strategy to a client and they want to know how much the strategy would increase their sales, what do you say to convince them that it will be valuable to their business?"
Well, so the wonderful part about e-commerce is you could easily quantify results in terms of revenue or conversion rate or traffic. And that's, so, you want to look at those key performance indicators. And obviously you can't guarantee things, but you can say, like, so, the way I'll do guarantees for performance based on key performance indicators. Essentially, I'll say, like, okay, well, we guarantee we'll 2x this, but if we don't, I will keep revising it until we do. So essentially, I've built a temporary retainer into the price of the package. But generally, I'll look at similar clients I've worked with. So I'm like, all right, I worked with another client in a similar space, and these were the results we got.
Nice. We have another question, a question from George. He says, "Do you recommend paying Facebook ads to get an audience and build an email list?"
Yeah, as long as you're really good about targeting and revising it. So generally what it's like, it's easy. Shopify is an interest on Facebook. So you could show ads to people whose interest is Shopify and a small business owner. So automatically, like, that's a good audience. You could use a lookalike audience if you have an existing list. But yeah, combining lead magnets with Facebook ads works really well. Remarketing ads on Facebook do work well as well.
Great. We have another one here related to a little bit question earlier from Michael Press. It says, "Do you recommend charging any sort of fee when meeting with or talking with a client for the first time?" It's like the first call.
It depends on the business. I used to. I don't do it anymore.
Okay.
And I don't know why I don't. I'm a big advocate of doing, like, road mapping. So do like the initial consultation is just like 15 minutes. Are we a good fit? And then, any strategy after that, then that's when I start charging. However, you could if someone just says, hey, can we jump on the phone? And they feel like a tire kicker, then that's when I would charge for the call. But if you're essentially anytime you're providing value, that's when you want to be charging for people.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it if you're providing value. Yeah, that's great to keep in mind. We have one here for you. Can you elaborate on talking like a consultant versus a freelancer? And it's coming from
It's a good question. It's about there's two good books I would read on this. One, Eric. Oh shoot, I forgot his name. Pitch Anything is the name of the book. The guy's last name is Orloff. I forgot his first name. Pitch Anything. There's a concept in there he has called frame control. That's very interesting. I would check that out. And then Alan Weiss has a new book out called $1 Million Maverick that teaches really like how to talk in this business like manner. But I think I got an MBA that helped a lot. But if I had to do it over again, I think just talking in terms of value is really the difference, the key difference there. And recommended reading for that, Alan Weiss's Value-Based Fees.
Okay, awesome. So we have a couple more minutes. I think that's time for a couple more questions. We have one here from David, and he said, "What's the key action you did to scale up your agency to get out of hourly rates?" Was there one key thing? Yeah.
Sure. Well, number one is position. Niching down, like the combination of positioning and niching down was phenomenally helpful because it gives you a clear vision on what you do, and it lets everyone else knows very clearly what you do, which makes it easy for them to make referrals, which makes it easy for them to decide whether or not to hire you. That helps significantly. And then I think the extension of that is productized consulting model. So publishing whatever the most common tasks you do are, make those fixed price, fixed scope engagements with published prices on your website. That makes it very easy. And then essentially I've turned it into a supply and demand thing where rather than if we're fully booked, I don't say, oh, I need to hire someone else and to take on more work. No, I raise the prices until it balances out. And we still haven't hit the ceiling on that.
Nice. We have one here from Gareth. He says, I have already gone down the road of WHMCS and set up a hosting service with Drupal clients. I can apply everything you have said to this. Do you think I can run a Shopify business at the same time?
I don't know what the first part of that is. I don't know what WMHS is.
Yeah, me neither.
But again, you know what? Actually, I don't have to know because I think you can't run two businesses and expect them both to be great. You'll lose that focus, and I think that's critical here is having that narrow focus and that tight niche.
Right. That's true. So we'll go with the last question here. We're running out of time. Is how far do you think one can go without hiring more people? And that comes from Nicole.
I know I have several friends, a few of them in my mastermind group, who will make. It's a one-person shop with a couple of 1099 folks involved, and they'll do $500,000 in personal income.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. And I think that's about it. I think we got through most of the questions that I got here, but we're running out of time. We have another session coming up right after, and I think one of the last comments I'll make to this is that I think one of the most valuable things that struck home with me this time I watched the presentation is that it's speak up for the great work you're doing yourselves because no one else will do it for you. So obviously, like you said, at a party, you don't want to be this person who's just talking about themselves and how great they are. But on your portfolio site, just talk about everything that you're doing great and how those clients benefit from it. I think that will drive a big response with people. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Kurt, before we sign off for the day.
Last piece of advice, single thing I hope you take away from this is, don't be afraid to invest in yourself and don't be afraid to say no to things that don't feel right. So I made several recommendations on books. Maybe those books are $15, $20 each. Buy them and read them. It will pay off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Investing in your own education, because the more you learn, the more you can offer to your clients. Or if you're going on the podcast market or writing blog articles, you got to learn something new to provide new education to other people as well. So I think that's critical. I'm always buying courses online for like, you can get them as cheap as like $5 now for stuff that's like hours long. So definitely keep learning and reading. Well, Kurt, again, thanks again for doing a presentation. I can, like I said, I learned a lot. Hopefully everyone online learned as well. Thank you so much for
Thanks for
attending.
having me. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, we have a great response to these partner sessions that we're doing for partners. So thanks for showing up and registering. The more you do that, the more we can get great content and great speakers like Kurt to do these again. We have one coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll be sending out an email on how you can build Shopify apps, and that's going to be a good one as well. So stay tuned for an email regarding that. But again, thanks again for everyone for attending. Again, Kurt, thanks again, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.